arts, lifestyle. SNS Online.
Маша, быстрее, мне страшно!
This is a story of fear, loss, and hardship.
Воздушная тревога.
Воздушная тревога. В укрытие.
Hello and welcome to SNS Online. Children of Ukraine is a new film by Shahida Tulaganova that attempts to expose the stark reality of Putin's illegal war against Ukraine through its diary of day-to-day life with Ukrainian children, many of them displaced by war. Tulaganova, who was previously responsible for Airport Donetsk, an unflinching portrait of a 200-day fight for the airport against Russian forces that won Best Non-Fiction Short in Russia's prestigious Art Doc Fest film festival, is hoping her latest offering will garner international attention for the plight of Ukrainian children, as well as a deeper understanding and appreciation of the struggles that this country currently faces. So Shahida Tulaganova, welcome to SNS Online. Firstly, I'd like to congratulate you on such a beautifully sensitive approach in highlighting this conflict in what is quite frankly an appalling time in modern human history, and for getting this vital film shown as early as possible on a national UK channel and beyond, I'm sure. We have seen so much footage coming from Ukraine, but this is the first time I've seen anything that has really got under the skin of the conflicts through the eyes of Ukraine's children. First of all, could you talk us through the origins of the project?
Well, I normally do field work in Ukraine and any other places in general.
Right.
And the production company, which was approached me, Renegade Pictures, asked me to find children. And I started looking for children. And once I started looking for children and certain relationship developed with me and parents, and then finally, the ITV commissioned the film, and I was offered to be a producer-director, which was an incredible honor. It was a pain. It was the most emotionally difficult project I ever done in my life.
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of war zones, and I worked in Syria a lot, in Iraq, and I made a film about genocide of Rohingya Muslims. So I know the trauma.
You're seasoned to deal with this stuff as best as you can.
Yeah, but this time that was only children, and that what made it more emotionally difficult.
Yeah. I mean, what were the things that you didn't expect whilst making it, things that even, as a seasoned pro, surprised you, either emotionally or in terms of things that actually happened and day-to-day stuff?
What surprised me most was that none of the children I spoke to, and those are not only the children which who are featured in the film. I spoke to many other children. They never complained about their experiences. They never complained about the lack of water or shortage of food. They've been through horrific stuff, and they spoke about it as children, as a matter of fact thing. They never wanted me to feel sorry for them.
Sure.
That's for sure. So resilience of these children really not surprised me. It was so uplifting.
Yeah.
It was something like it was a ray of light in the darkness.
18-year-old Vyacheslav and his 4 younger brothers and sisters grew up in a village in East Ukraine called Toretska.
Я був такою людиною, що я завжди десь був.
What was the toughest part for you, would you say?
The toughest part of the film was talking to 18-year-old Vyacheslav, whose mom died in front of his eyes as a result of the shelling. And he ended up being a legal guardian for 4 of his siblings. And that was the hardest part, because Vyacheslav is a very proud person, And like many other children, I mean, to me, he's still a teenager. He didn't want anyone to feel sorry for himself, but he opened up, and the pain he's going through really got to me.
Yeah.
He has huge responsibility looking for his siblings aged 16, 11, 9, and 8 or 6. I don't remember exactly. While he's studying and trying to work and trying to keep the family together. In the meantime, he can't sleep because all these images, seeing his mom dead, dying on his arms, is something which I can't really imagine that.
In western Ukraine, Vyacheslav takes his brothers and sisters to the local orphanage to play with other kids. Behind smiles and laughter, there is a deep wound which may never heal. He still thinks about home.
What struck me about the film, one of the many things that I loved about the film, was the way you managed to capture everyday life. How important was it to approach a film in that way?
It is important. It was absolutely important to capture day-to-day life for the audiences to understand what these children are going through on a daily basis. Because otherwise we will never feel what they're feeling. And that was the main point of the film. Yeah. And it was not that difficult, I have to tell you, because there was only one danger, especially working in the eastern Ukraine, like in Kharkiv or Zaporizhia. There was shelling all the time, and sometimes quite loud. So security-wise, it was difficult. Yeah. Otherwise, people were very open, and all the children were eager to tell their stories. I think that was the part which surprised me most, because if you look at children here in the UK, for example, I have 2 children as well. They're not that talkative. But these kids really were not hesitant to open up and tell the everyday routine. And I think psychologically for them, me coming as a stranger, being interested in their story made a huge difference.
10-year-old Angelina lives in Ukraine's second largest city, Kharkiv, just 25 miles from the Russian border.
До війни, в принципі, школа, друзі. Я ухожу в 4 часа.
Tell us about the team you worked with.
From the beginning of my work with the production company, I insisted in having Ukrainian cameramen. Okay. Because there are lots of very good cameramen in Ukraine, and we need to support local talent as well. And I felt like if I have a Ukrainian cameraman, it'll be easier to work. And I had a fantastic cameraman, Petro Tsimbal, who actually, in a very quiet way, but absolutely brilliantly, can capture the moods. I filmed myself as well a little bit with a second camera, but my main job was to talk, because when you speak to a child in particular and you film at the same time, that's wrong. Yeah. You have to sit down and dedicate all your attention to the interviewee, in this case, the children. Production-wise, I set up all the interviews. I found all these people and children, and I was organizing everything myself. I had amazing security officer consultant, which I was very lucky about, because normally I don't work with security advisors, but that was one of the requirements by ITV and the Warner Brothers. And we were lucky because Steve Holland from Emerald is the name of the security company, was absolutely amazing with the children. He played football with them, and they loved him. Oh, that's so sweet. To the point, it was really sweet, because normally there's a tough guys, who kind of rough and etc. But he was very mellow and sweet with them, and they absolutely fell in love with him.
Oh, that's
and
adorable.
I think he kind of also misses them, because 3 weeks ago I was thinking I'll go to Ukraine back to visit the children with some Christmas presents and try to raise some funds, because you can't really, especially now when they don't have electricity, And lack of electricity means lack of water. They don't have proper food and shops don't work. It's really miserable. And it's winter and it's Christmas season,
Yeah.
and you really want some magic. And I thought, well, if you go and you kind of show your face and say, hey, I still care about you and here are some presents, would make some sort of light in their heart. Steve called me. He was like, I want to go. I want to go visit the children. I'm like, wait, I want to go. So we decided to join our forces together, and his company is helping with logistics of the trip, with transport, etc. And I know that Steve done a lot in raising, some warm clothes, thermals, all you need for winter.
Andrei and his friends now play war games, setting up checkpoints with toy guns in their village.
Как наши дети встречают наших
Ну что, вот
солдат.
мы подъезжаем к первому блокпосту.
How do you feel people are physically going to survive the winter? You're talking about there's no electricity, there's no heating. How do people physically make that work?
Well, those people who live in private houses, they saw wood, and that's what they do. They actually started doing it even in summer.
Okay.
Now, that will resolve your problem of heating, like plus minus, yeah?
Sure.
But it will not resolve your problem of electricity. Especially now when Russians damage almost 40% of electrical grid, as well as, they always attack nuclear plants as well. Well, it's going to be the worst winter ever. And I'm very, very worried about it, because those generators, which are supplied by many people, and we are also bringing 5 generators with us, they don't last long, and they work on fuel, on petrol. A part of everything else, imagine the environmental damage, because you burn this fuel, but otherwise you can't leave.
For Boris and millions like him, games and school were replaced by the struggle to find food and to shelter from Russian bombs.
So in terms of international aid, obviously they were looking for more arms, ammunition, all the rest of it. But in terms of this type of aid, what specifically needs to be taken across and, obviously done as discreetly as possible?
First of all, I agree with the Ukrainian government, which advised the citizens to leave Ukraine if they can. Yeah. And therefore, my appeal to the international community, and mainly the European Union, to make spaces available. Make spaces available because people have to run, especially in the eastern Ukraine. The situation is absolutely dire. This is number one. Number two, in terms of the aid, yes, it's generators, power banks.
These are presumably big pieces of equipment to get across, aren't they?
Yeah, it is hard to get it across, but charities can do it. Okay. Volunteer organizations can do it. It should be done. It can be done.
Well, it has to be
but
done.
That's not going to be it's not going to solve the problem. I think... especially Eastern Ukraine was always my soft spot, because I always felt so bad that they're going through this war since 2014, and they've seen a lot of bad things. And now the main theater of military activities is in the East. And for them to get out of there takes, Ukraine is a huge country, takes time. And plus they don't know where to go. So people are scared, people are in unknown, and etc. So opening up spaces for them in the nearby countries will help. But obviously, all the needs in terms of warm clothes is absolutely essential.
Yeah.
By the end of the first week of shelling, their street had gone from being among the finest in Mariupol to being one of the most heavily damaged. Dimit and Maxim's families took shelter in the basement as their homes continued to be pummeled.
Но вообще в подвале было даже очень холодно.
Getting the film out there, both nationally and internationally, of course, we've just had a screening on ITV last week. Apparently there's two versions of the film, a 90-minute one and obviously a 60-minute that was edited for ITV. Tell us about the longer version. Where's that going?
The longer version of the film, which is 90 minutes, is going for Arte, which is a French-German channel. 90 minutes version is going to be a bit, I think, better than 60 minutes because we have additional children. I have amazing girl aged 14, Ksenia, from Mariupol, and she's a dancer, a professional dancer. She used to be.
Wow.
Who is very emotional, and she completes the story of my two boys from Mariupol because she's older. And her horrific account of leaving the city on foot, when you imagine she's a dancer and she froze her joints in Mariupol. Wow. So she could barely walk, carrying these bags on her, two backpacks, etc., to the point that when they can arrive to safety and she took her clothes off, actually for the first time in 1.5 months, right? During the siege, she noticed these blue stripes on her skin because of the heavy bags.
Yes.
And the story is just, it's a film in itself, you know, what can I say? And we include the children from Izium. This is the city in eastern Ukraine, which was under Russian occupation for 6 months. And I was lucky to get there 3 days after the liberation. And I found these amazing 3 brothers who actually took me to their house, and I spoke to parents and I filmed with them. And that story cracked my heart completely.
Because, of course, they have dealt with Russian occupation. So this is a different perspective now, isn't it?
That was totally different perspective. And you know what? It's for the first time I saw children who were hungry. And that hit me so hard because I was warned by my colleagues who've been to Izium earlier than me that there's no food. So we came prepared. I mean, we bought some food stuff. But when I spoke to these children about food, I wanted to cry because in this half a year of Russian occupation, they had humanitarian aid from Russia only twice. And one boy said, "Mama, but you remember there was one Russian soldier, he actually shared his food with us." I'm like, oh my God. And then when I was leaving, I left some money to mom. I said, well, they worked very hard in the interview, etc. And she said, wow. She said, finally I can go to the shop and buy, not to the shop, to the market and buy milk to my children. That was absolutely heartbreaking.
The boys watch the news regularly and are well aware of the Russian advance.
Сейчас в Одессе и Львове и Киеве.
What are your long-term hopes for this film and getting it out to the widest audience possible?
It's going to be available in the UK, of course. It's going to be seen in Europe since Arte, which is a European pretty much channel, is going to show it. Renegade Pictures, the production company, is talking to the American broadcasters about putting it there, but we are in a very early stages because we just submitted 60 minutes. We are about to submit 90 minutes. I know that ITV has submitted it for BAFTA nomination and Emmys as well.
Wow.
And
Quite right too.
Well, I'm not so ambitious,
Yeah.
but I want this film to have as much exposure as possible for people, because when people look at Ukraine, they mainly watch the news and about this destruction, this explosion. But when you have this intimate story of these absolutely beautiful children who talk so sincerely, you kind of get this war on a different level. And that's what I want to achieve.
In Odessa, 11-year-old Denis and 8-year-old Timofey are getting ready to leave too. With Russian warships nearby, it is not safe to stay.
Давай покажем, что мы собрали на случай того, что
Tell us about the money you've been personally raising for these children.
Well, I set up a crowdfunding page in Just Fund Me, and I was very modest in my target at £1,000, which luckily, thank you very much to everyone who donated, we raised in virtually 3 days.
Wow.
The funds raised are going to be spent on either cash to the parents of these children who were in the film, just to get them by through winter because people lost their jobs and they're really struggling, or buying like power banks, mainly power banks to be honest, thermal, clothes, etc. to the children, as well as some toys and presents. I'll buy presents in Ukraine because shops still work and you want to support the local people.
How would people find this GoFundMe campaign on social media?
It's on my Facebook, Shahida Tulaganova, and if anyone wants to donate, it's Just Fund Me, and it's called Children of Ukraine. Because I'm a parent myself, and I know how kids are eager. You know, in Ukraine, they don't celebrate Christmas; they celebrate New Year's.
Mm-hmm.
And just imagine myself being a parent with no money, but you still want to do Christmas, right? You still want to do something magic for your children, and like you can't really. You really want to give these parents a chance, just to have some fun, and make something nice for their children.
Maxim and Dimit today live in a refuge in Zaporizhia, in eastern Ukraine. When they moved there, Zaporizhia was relatively safe. More recently, it has come under intense bombardment. It's estimated that at least 20,000 people were killed in the siege of Mariupol, and 90% of the city was totally destroyed.
Just finally, really, your thoughts on the war in general and the importance of journalistic impartiality in the face of clearly provocative, aggressive acts from Putin's forces.
Well, this is the toughest war in terms of my impartiality.
Yeah.
I have to tell you that when Russia started its war against Ukraine back in 2014, I made a film called Airport Donetsk. And I was kind of traveling between Ukraine and the occupied territories, Donetsk and Lugansk. And I thought maybe I can be impartial and portray the story of a battle for the airport from both sides, which I did. But I have to tell you, even back then, my sympathies were totally on the Ukrainian side because they were attacked.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, this war made it absolutely clear for me. There is an attacker, and there is a country which is an aggressive country with the Nazi ideology. I'm really sorry to say that's not Ukraine, but whatever you hear from Russian TV will make your hair gonna get up. That's really Goebbels style propaganda. And partial and impartial, people are being killed. People are being killed. Children who lost their lives, about 437 so far, the children they're calculated. And I think the number is at least twice more. Children who lost their homes, lives are ruined. How can you possibly be impartial? When I saw these kids in Izium, the hungry kids, that was it. To me, that was the last point because I couldn't come to my senses after that. I just couldn't believe that in the 21st century, we have children who survived for 6 months only on some boiled awful pasta. Like pasta, the dry stuff,
Yeah.
Oh.
In her new home, Kira is trying to get back to normal life, doing the things she loved to do before the war.
Это мы уже с мамой учили.
Just as a sort of a roundup, really, I think you're doing an incredible job. I mean, I appreciate that you think, you look at Ukraine and your life is comfortable, but you're going in there again and again to spotlight what is going on to the widest audience possible, and I think that is commendable.
Thank you. I can't do otherwise.
Shahida Tulaganova, thank you so much for sharing these stories with the world.
Я думал, всегда Россия с Украиной братья. Все везде это писали. Ну, как-то так.